Well, I've been like you. I think in the past I can see where instead of seeing God redeeming the sexes like this, I've wanted to redeem them like this,
right.
and I've been,
we want our justice.
We want justice and rights.
and
Yeah.
I've been through a lot of anger, and I know in university I did a lot of the feminist route too, and that's not right. Like that's a response to the brokenness, but it makes the brokenness worse.
It's a
instead of
wedge.
bringing
Yeah.
it together.
Because we live in a fallen world.
That's right.
You know,
But I
we're
love
bringing
the
this
fact
back.
that, and that's why you inspired me when you said, we can look at this whole fall in a whole different way, that Jesus came to not just reconcile us to him and to God, but to reconcile us to one another. And that means men and women.
Yeah.
And so how does that look when you're doing this, in this mentoring women? How do you get them, once a woman says, I think there's something in me and I don't know what to do with it, where do you take them from there?
Well, that's where our next level leadership really comes in. We encourage women to look at their sphere of influence. We don't go in and say to women, you need to be here or you need to be there. The gifting is given. And I was really interested in your daughter. One of the things that we say at Next Level Leadership is that we want women to find their voice and influence and transform their world. We believe that we need godly women at all the decision-making places of our country, in the politics, in the legal world, in the educational world, medical world, in the home, in the church, in the schools. We want to free women, to encourage them to find their gifts, to exercise their gifts wherever God puts them.
And Lynn, what I love and appreciate about this whole mission, which began 2001, and care with 140 or so women.
Yes.
We've already heard on the couch here that knowledge, understanding of God's truth has helped to diffuse some of the tone of voice that could be coming at this need to rise, to express gifts. And you're helping women to, who are coming wounded. A lot of them are angry. They're really angry. And they've been frustrated, repressed, and oppressed for years. Where do you start to bring that level of, okay, troops, let's just bring it down a notch and see what God will do?
I think probably the key for us is that we use the model of Jesus, and we've taken Henry Nouwen's book, In the Name of Jesus, and it's a book on leadership, and he talks about the temptations of Jesus, the temptation to be relevant, the temptation to be spectacular, and the temptation to be powerful. And Jesus rejects those, and we say, isn't that what leadership is all about? Leadership is about being powerful and relevant and spectacular. You want to be head and shoulders above other people. You want to draw attention so that you take your place. But it's all a power position. It's a status that you mentioned. What we're saying is, why did Jesus say that those were temptations and say no to them? Well, if you draw attention to yourself, for instance, you do not then reach out and embrace others. You do not make a place, a safe place for other people. And if you're going to be a leader, you really need to make a safe place for other people. You need to be real. You need to be vulnerable. You need to be not taking that head and shoulders above everybody else position. The sign on the door doesn't matter. It's who you are as you interact with people that really matters. If you try to be relevant, you're trying to meet everybody's needs, and you're pulled from one to the other. Jesus knew why he was here. He knew what his mission was, and he went about and did that. People wanted him to do different things, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And he said, no, this is why the Father has sent me. So he rejected the idea of being relevant in order to be, to have integrity, to be who he knew he was and live out of that. We try to encourage women to look for their own internal values. Somebody mentioned values earlier. What are your values? Know what they are and live out of those. So you live with integrity. You give other people a place to belong. And then the issue of power. If you're into power, you're not going to give it away.
No.
Whereas,
You'll hoard it.
yeah, and women's generally, and I don't want to ever be thought to say all men are like this and all women are like this. That's not true. But generally, women have a much more collaborative, networking kind of leadership, where we bring others in and we share information, and we kind of move out from a center rather than a top-down kind of model. That's the model that we've been raised with, what we've seen, but we're beginning to find, no, there's another way. There's another model.
And that's
so we try to
exciting.
encourage women to do that.
Because you think about the next generation growing up. I have 2 daughters, and I was always scared they'd be raised in a church which would tell them that there really isn't anything that you can do for God. In the secular world, you can be all that you can be, but here you can't. But what you're saying is, there's this new model emerging, and I find that so exciting. And the thought that our girls can struggle and can pray about what is that calling that God's given to me, because God has given me an important calling. And if all of our little girls, as well as our women, struggled with that, imagine what God can do in this world.
And it encourages me that because, our viewers and our friends, there's men and women. I mean, it would be so great too for, men to kind of go, I need to step up. I need to empower and encourage women in their role. I need to be a voice for them
even as you
well.
shared about the men in your life growing up who spoke into your life, that's amazing. And I think all women need that too. We need men to encourage us in our giftings.
That's right.
I mean, the most encouraging things that have come for me and validating often have come from men who see something in me. And that's precious. That's such a precious gift you were given.
I think we've started a good conversation going here.
Keep going all the way through the day.
Could keep going.